Good evening. Welcome on this holy night. For those of us who are gathered here, I hope you picked up one of these mini flashlights, and hopefully in your bulletin are 2 pieces of paper. You'll find out what to do with them later. But if you have them, that's great. If you are joining us at home, you are invited as well to participate by getting a couple pieces of paper, a pen, and a candle, a flashlight, whatever makes light. And again, this is invitation. You don't have to do that. But one of the things we're going to be doing later in worship, as you can see, we have a few unusual items with us today, is over this whole Lenten season, as we've been talking more deeply about healing, we heard from almost every single Wednesday night teacher how important it is to physically express our anger and grief. And so we're going to get an opportunity to do that later in this worship service by invitation. But welcome to this holy night. On this night, we remember that our human ability to create violence, suffering, fear, and shame are real. On this night, we see the consequences of our inability to accept God's truth as we cling to our own illusions. On this night, we allow silence, contemplation, anger, and grief to be part of our worship because here we meet God as well. In fact, on this holy night, we see a part of God we often forget or deny, a God who absorbs all our darkness and stretches out his arms in love and forgiveness, a God who is willing to suffer and die to reach us, a God who is not afraid to walk with us in the valley of the shadow of death. Let us enter into this holy night where we meet again Christ crucified for us.
My
Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. And the soldiers wove a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and they dressed him in a purple robe. They kept coming up to him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and striking him in the face. Pilate went out again and said to them, "Look, I'm bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no case against him." So Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." When the chief priests and the police saw him, they shouted, "Crucify him, crucify him." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and crucify him. I find no case against him." The Jewish leaders answered him, "We have a law, and according to the law, he ought to die because he is claimed to be the Son of God." Now, when Pilate heard this, he was more afraid than ever. Pilate entered his headquarters again and asked Jesus, "Where are you from?" But Jesus gave him no answer. Pilate therefore said to him, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have the power to release you and the power to crucify you?" Jesus answered him, "You would have no power over me unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." From then on, Pilate tried to release him, but the leaders cried out, "If you release this man, you're no friend of the emperor. Everyone who claims to be a king sets himself against the emperor." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus outside and sat on the judge's bench at the place called the Stone Pavement, or in Hebrew, Gabbatha. Now it was the day of preparation for the Passover, and it was about noon. He said to the Jewish leaders, "Here is your king." They cried out, away with him, crucify him." Pilate asked them, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king but the emperor." Then he handed him over to them to be crucified. So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross by himself, he went out to the place that is called the Skull, which in Hebrew is called Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with 2 others, one on either side, with Jesus between them. Pilate also had an inscription written and put on the cross. It read, "Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews." Meanwhile, standing near the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." He said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. After this, when Jesus knew that all was now finished, he said, in order to fulfill the scripture, "I am thirsty." A jar full of sour wine was standing there, so they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the wine, he said, "It is finished." And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Since it was the day of preparation, the Jewish leaders did not want the bodies left on the cross during the Sabbath, especially because the Sabbath was a day of great solemnity. So they asked Pilate to have the legs of the crucified men broken and the bodies removed. Then the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and the other who'd been crucified with him. But when they came to Jesus and saw he was already dead, they did not break his legs. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and at once blood and water came out. He who saw this has testified so that you may also believe. His testimony is true, and he knows that he tells the truth. These things occurred so that the scripture might be fulfilled. None of his bones shall be broken. And again, another passage of scripture says, "They will look on the one whom they have pierced." After these things, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Jesus, though a secret one because of his fear of the Jews, asked Pilate to let him take away the body of Jesus. Pilate gave him permission, so he came and removed his body. Nicodemus, who had first come to Jesus by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes weighing about 100 pounds. They took the body of Jesus and wrapped it with the spices in linen cloths, according to the burial custom of the Jews. Now there was a garden in the place where he was crucified, and in the garden there was a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. And so, because it was the Jewish day of preparation and the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. Here ends the reading. There's a scene at the end of the 6th movie of Harry Potter where we have been following along with the story. If any of you have watched those movies or read the books, we've been following along as this young boy, Harry Potter, learns the story of his life, how there's this dark Lord Voldemort who is trying to come back into power. And then he has, just in the previous book, he's come back into power, and there seems to be a division of people who believe and don't believe. And at the end of the 6th book, Harry Potter's been with his mentor, Dumbledore, who's this powerful wizard. And there, in this climactic moment, someone who Dumbledore trusts kills him and he falls to the ground. And in that moment, the symbol of the Dark Lord, this creepy skull, fills the sky as if a victory cry that darkness has won. And as Harry is weeping over his mentor, and all the students and the teachers come out and surround, and they start to realize the deep fear and despair of this moment, one girl takes her wand and shines it up into the sky. And then all the others, one by one, shine their wand up and dispel that scary symbol in the sky. It's such a beautiful, powerful moment because as the person watching, you know that it's such a small effort against so much darkness. It's just a few people against so many who are powerful, who are coming. And yet you get the sense from those people that they are not going to go down without shining their light. What I love about the books and the movies is that the threat becomes bigger and bigger the more you watch, until it gets to the point where you're not really sure how they're going to come out against the threat. You don't know what's going to happen. And after the books and movies came out, I was reading all of these articles by people who really resonated with these books so much because Harry goes through so many awful things. He was abused as a child. He has people he loves who have died before his eyes. This is someone who's been through things, and the threat he faces is very real. And for people who've been through really rough stuff, that made them feel as if maybe they could survive too. It was precisely because the author went into really dark places that the hope felt that much brighter. One of the reasons why people don't always want to come to Good Friday services is because it can feel a little too dark. It can feel kind of depressing. Who wants to come and hear about Jesus dying again? But Jesus and God meet us here for a very particular need we have as humans. And that is whatever deep, dark pain and trauma and shame and guilt and fear we might have for ourselves and for the world. It is here at the cross that we are met. That God can say in all honesty, I know how bad it gets. I've been there, and I know the way out. We gather around the cross with the disciples, watching the betrayal and the murder of our master, the violence and the control of the powers that have made their statement as if it's a symbol in the sky. And if we look out in the world, we see what feels like crucifixion happening over and over again, with bombs dropping in Ukraine, with innocent people being murdered around the world in various ways. And sometimes it feels as if the cries of the innocent mean nothing to those in power. Maybe you've experienced something really, really hard in your life, And you don't know when the sun will rise again and where life will find a way. And that is when it is so powerful that we can come together as a community to shine our lights together into the darkness, knowing that even if we're not sure how it's going to happen, God will find a way. And we won't give up. We stand together, maybe wounded, maybe grieving, but with hope that love and life will conquer death and hatred. In fact, I believe so strongly we're called to look at and to name the suffering in ourselves and the world, not out of hopelessness or helplessness, but because we have hope. That we are strong enough to look at the dark shadows of the world and then move together to the light and to life. This was what Jesus was trying to tell Nicodemus in that chapter of John when Nicodemus came to him at night. Jesus said, "I will be lifted up so that all who look at me, that image of suffering, will find life." He used that image of Moses lifting a bronze serpent up on a pole, that whoever bit by a serpent would look at the object of their suffering and find healing. And so too, when we look at the cross of Jesus, we see the worst of our humanity. We see grief and pain and suffering, and we have to notice it, that it's real. And maybe that's why some people would rather just skip right to Easter, because walking through the darkest valleys together is hard, but it's faithful. We can only create true change in the world when we first look at what is truly hurting us. And so later tonight, one reason why I gave you these is we will shine our lights together into the darkness. But these go with you into the night, to take with you in your life. And maybe when you're walking through a dark parking lot, these will come in handy, but maybe if you just feel as if the world is getting too dark, you can shine your light up and say, "I don't know how, but God, I want to be on the side of hope and life and love. Make me an instrument of your peace. May earth become as heaven." You have 2 pieces of paper in your bulletins, and I invite you to take them out now. And hopefully there's a pen or a pencil nearby. And what we're going to do together now, what we invite you to do, is on one of the pieces of paper, you can write everything about your life or in your heart that you want to let go of, whether it's a pain or an anger or resentment. What is it you want to let go of? A fear? And the other sheet of paper, you can write things in the world, the sufferings and the pain of the world that you wish God would heal. And when you're done with all of those, we'll invite you to bring them forward. We'll have a few people who will help you nail them to the cross. We'll have some music going at this point. And here's the fun part. When you are done nailing it to the cross, I invite you to come and whack this drum as hard as you can. And the reason is there's something cathartic about it. And we'll be drumming right along with you to encourage you. Because we do hold within us grief and sorrow and anger. And part of our healing is naming it, giving it to God, and expressing that. So we're now going to just take a moment, as long as you need, to write whatever you want. And when you're ready, come forward and we will meet you here. Now you can take the candles, your lights out, shine them up. I will not let my light go out. I will hold it up in defiance of the powers that seek to overwhelm. I will nourish and protect my light. I stand in defiance of the powers that tell me I'm too small to make a difference. I will shine my light with courage. I stand in defiance of the powers that seek to destroy and disempower. I will find my allies, other carriers of the sacred light. I will link my work with theirs, receiving and giving courage. Together we will live by compassion in the face of apathy and violence. We will live by courage in the face of rage. We will live by integrity in the face of betrayal. We will live by wisdom in the face of cynicism and folly. We will not believe the story of the world. We will choose to believe the story of God, one where death is not the end, where violent powers are revealed for what they are. They will fall. They will collapse upon themselves. What will remain is the sacred light within us. What will remain is any word or deed or power given in love. The future is not determined. We can help God create it. I will not give up my power and turn my back on this holy work. I choose to co-create with God, to partner with the sacred, to be a channel of peace, to dream new dreams, to see new visions, so the world can heal and all within it may enter into a new time where all live together in harmony. May it be, O God, may it be.